Hey, everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan, and we very rarely get a chance to hear from the Ripple chairman, Chris Larsen. There was a podcast that was recorded just 48 hours prior to the SEC versus Ripple summary judgment. And it's very good. It's about an hour long, but I've taken some, I think, the most important clips that are most relevant for the crypto space. They do a lot of talking about San Francisco. As a person who grew up in the Bay Area, I was quite interested in listening to that portion, but I figured on a worldwide interest level, maybe not everyone would be so interested in that part. So I was light on that in the clips. But if you want to listen to it, I'll put a link to the full podcast in the description below. Well, of course, they talk a little bit about the catastrophe with FTX and the political struggle in the United States, along with, you're going to find it very funny on the comment that was made about Vitalik. And of course, conversation about Gensler. And Chris Larsen says they plan on taking it to the very end, to the Supreme Court, which he believes the Supreme Court would hear the case, but they are going to go all the way to defend Ripple. And gosh, I didn't know Andreessen was such an unpopular person in the Bay Area. Anyway, that was kind of a new finding for me. And they go into some of the work that he's been doing in San Francisco, followed up by some work that he's doing in climate. So I thoroughly enjoyed the hour, but I've brought it down to just about 17 minutes. So I hope you do enjoy. Until next time, take care. Sayonara for now. Bye-bye.
So let's get into crypto. It's been a tough couple of years in the industry. For people who don't know, Chris started eLoan in 1997. It was an early pioneer in online loans. He sold it. Then he had Prosper, which was a loan company essentially too, to help businesses similar to the loans you're making in a lot of ways. Also a pioneer, had some defaults, was very early. But then you founded Ripple. You also have a crypto token, XRP. It's 6th in the market for cryptocurrencies under BNB coin and USD coin. Talk about what you do for people who may not understand. They're fundamentally different than most blockchain companies and crypto tokens.
Yeah, so Ripple, the company, is using blockchain technology, using cryptocurrency specifically. XRP is the one that we think is the most efficient, most climate efficient. But we're using that to make cross-border payments more efficient.
So remittances, you were in the remittance
Remittance
business.
is part of that, but it's anything that's crossing borders. So that could be
global
treasuries, companies. This is a huge problem in the world where moving money, which is mostly digital, cross borders can take 10 days. It can cost huge amounts of money, huge failure rates. It's cutting out billions of people in the global economy. So this, we think, is the best use case for blockchain tech, is fixing cross-border payments and making sort of what you'd call an internet of value that would be overlaid with the internet of information.
So you have this company that facilitates, not necessarily was in crypto, but you have this coin that you're using to do so. When it seemed to stabilize, crypto had a fallout after the collapse of FTX last fall, of course. But right now, Binance, the biggest exchange for crypto, is in real trouble, losing staff. It has an SEC investigation whether customers' funds were mingled and mishandled, very not unsimilar to FTX. Then again, shares in Bitcoin and Coinbase, also a facilitator, also under investigation by the SEC, have made significant gains in recent weeks. Talk about the state of crypto right now. It's being supplanted by generative AI. Everyone's onto that. They've moved from crypto. But is it in spring, winter, fall, what?
Spring, yeah. I think the winter is over. I mean, but here's the thing. It's the tale of two cities. In the U.S., we have really screwed up blockchain tech and crypto policy. Everywhere else, it's booming. And so we've actually lost our leadership role. It has now moved to Singapore, London, Dubai. They're kind of the three majors that are fighting out. Japan also is a player. Brazil, everywhere basically is kind of welcoming this. And most of our people that we're hiring now are overseas. So we're still booming. We're hiring like crazy. We're just not doing anything in the U.S., even though we're headquartered in San Francisco and we're committed to San Francisco. And that's a shame.
Let's talk about that. The industry has the perception it's full of scammers, especially around the news around FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried was everywhere talking about crypto, encouraging Washington to regulate crypto, credibly visible, money everywhere. How has his fall affected the industry's profile? Because you're wound up with the SEC and others. I'll get to that in a second. But talk about him as a moment.
Oh, it was just catastrophic. Mostly because he was incredibly political. He saw everybody. So what happened was the supporters, particularly in the Dems, because he seemed to really be going after the Dems, anybody who saw him.
His other founder did the Republicans. But
right, yeah. And the word was there was a bunch of Dem staff members that were kind of really looking forward to joining the company. So when it blew up, all of the supporters were like, okay, Chuck Schumer even said, like, we can't talk about crypto for 6 months until it cools down. But that did not stop the enemies, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world and the Brad Shermans, California representative. Senator Warren, literally, her campaign slogan is, I'm building an anti-crypto army. Okay, why? I mean, it's not like I'm protecting consumers, and she's done great on that. I used to love what she was doing. It just doesn't make any sense, right? The progressives in Washington, there's like two flavors. There's the Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren, who's super anti-tech, she always has been. And then there's the Ron Wydens out of Oregon, who, if it wasn't for him, probably the Clinton framework on internet would never have happened, right? He was instrumental. And the Ro Khannas. So it's really weird. But somehow the sort of anti-innovation progressives grabbed the wheel after Sam, and it just undermined everything.
Isn't it right to be nervous about such a scam to happen so quickly?
Absolutely. But like in anything, it's like fix the bad stuff, get the bad players, and encourage innovation that's going to be good for our country.
Wouldn't that be blamed on Sam Bankman-Fried and not the politicians who are reacting to it?
Well, I think there's a lot of players in the game, and there's blame to go around. But Sam definitely was a complete catastrophe.
So it's created a real problem for you. And the SEC lawsuit was filed against Ripple in a press release, said that Bitcoin and Ethereum are Chinese controlled. In December, the Ethereum creator said a bunch of things, including that XRP is still centralized. He also said he hasn't gotten an apology. Is he going to get one?
So, we used to hang out with Vitalik. He was like covering the space before he started Ethereum. I think Vitalik's been on Twitter too much. He's got that Twitter disease. But look, it's a very tribal industry. And so every protocol has its sort of army, so to speak, and they all hate each other. Not entirely. It's starting to wane a little bit. But that's what that is. I mean, what Vitalik said there is just BS. And was he offended that we said that proof of work was controlled by China? Well, it was, until they kicked everybody out. Now it's all here. Now, hats off to Vitalik for leading Ethereum to switch from proof of work, burning insane amounts of energy, to cutting that by 99.9% by moving to a different system. Hats off to them. But that's another reason why it's such a head scratch that U.S. policy now, and Gary Gensler in particular,
we're going to get to him.
Big Bitcoin fan, he's sort of put everything in this big question mark, except the thing that is literally, it's using about 100 trillion watt hours in energy.
More energy. So, why do you think he's been so aggressive in going after it? Just a power, like he wants to control it, and she feels like it's close enough to currency.
It's sort of it's sort of the Gary Gensler MO. It's sort of what he did when he was the CFTC, and it's sort of what he did when he brought down LIBOR. By the way, did a bunch of lawsuits, lost all of them, but he doesn't care. Yeah,
futures trading. Good.
Yeah, he's trying to destroy the industry. That's what he's trying to do. Except Bitcoin. He's a Bitcoin fan. He's always talking about Satoshi, this, that, and the other thing. He did a bunch of tours with Joey Ito back in the day, with MIT, all over the world, kind of bashing everything except Bitcoin. I just don't get that. That makes no sense to me. And it's totally inappropriate for a U.S. regulator to take that position, an unelected person. Talk about agency power, everything the Supreme Court hates these days. This should go to Congress. Congress should pass regulation. This is the weird point where people say, the industry doesn't want regulation. No, they want regulation to make it clear.
And until then, they will fight it out. You are correct. In 2018, before he was chairman of the SEC, Gensler said that Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash were not securities. They made up roughly 3/4 of the market at the time. So he's changed his tune because you can change your mind. You do know that you can decide that maybe they are in fact securities. And some people do make very good arguments about it.
And now with the switch to proof of stake, sorry to get too much in the weed here, with Ethereum, he's now questioning whether it's a security again. And that makes no sense. Of course it's not. We are going to defend this to the end. This is unjust. These things go through Congress, not these unelected agency, power-hungry people that, by the way, look down on San Franciscans. They always have. There's people in Washington. Sorry, I know you live in Washington. But it's true. They look down on us, right?
No.
They don't.
I don't agree with you.
I don't know. I've just met with so many of them. And
really?
I'll tell you what, if San Francisco was the blockchain capital of the world like it was, I think your vacancy rate would be half of what it is today.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be the AI center of the universe. So
I guess we made room for AI. The other company, by the way, in the crosshairs of the SEC, Coinbase. Now, how outrageous is it? Coinbase, the SEC let them go public. Mm-hmm. They're probably one of the straightest shooters you're ever going to find. Brian Armstrong, who the CEO, has been at this for 10 years. These guys are straight shooters, and they have bent over backwards to work with the regulators, to make suggestions on how the industry can improve. To go after them is the most cynical thing I think I've ever seen.
But it would be good for you and your company if you're a commodity. So that has to be your stance.
Not only that, but in the current way the law is structured, if something's under the SEC, it cannot be a currency because securities can only be exchanged by broker-dealers. You actually destroy it in the current regulatory regime. Every other country has either said, nope, they're commodities through a commodities group, or they create a new agency and new rules that really capture the essence of the industry.
Would you like that?
Well, you have to have something that works and not destroys the industry. The way Gary Gensler is going, I mean, you have to conclude he's trying to destroy the industry, except for Bitcoin. So that doesn't make any sense. And by the way, in the securities laws, it's a specific exemption. Currencies are not securities for that very reason, because everybody has to be able to exchange them. And again, as
and if you lose?
Well, appeal, and our appellate strategy, I think, is ironclad. And if we lose the appeal, Supreme Court, and I think this case would be taken by the Supreme Court. When you look about the agency overreach here, I think it would be taken by it,
and it has to be decided on, presumably.
You do have people that are attracted here because of all the freedom, the innovation, just the way it feels, the Mediterranean climate with our extra air conditioning. I mean, it's the greatest place in the world, right? So you get a lot of people attracted here, make their money, and then, like a Mark Andreessen, I don't know, is he here anymore? Where did he go? I think he's in Vegas, right? But,
I don't know.
So
I think that's not a loss necessarily, but that's just...
I don't know. I don't know what happened to Mark.
None of us do.
No. You see his AI thing, by the way, recently?
What did he say now?
The AI save the world.
Yes, I know. It's
oh my God.
Perfect.
And anybody who's concerned about safety is a cult and a
no.
bootlegger and
yeah,
a Baptist.
No.
What the heck?
I don't get my life advice from Mark Andreessen.
Smart.
Something happened to him. I'm not really clear and don't care to find out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to switch to climate. You have a climate change foundation with your wife. You've put money into conversion plants, which are convert trash into energy. That's called, I think it's Omni, but you put about $35 million into that. You have one called Blue Planet, which makes trash into building materials, I believe.
Green concrete.
Green concrete, right. There was a story about Sam Altman, who's behind OpenAI, also doing small nuclear devices for the home.
Is that fusion?
This is a fascinating area, fusion.
Yeah, he's gone big on that.
He's gone big on little fusion, yeah. There's a lot going on about, I just did a really interesting interview with Oliver Stone, of all people, about nuclear energy. There's all kinds of, Bill Gates is making investments all over the place. Elon is too.
Yeah.
I can see why. It's existential. None of this we've talked about matters whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you can see what's happening across the country right now.
We got to leave our kids a planet that's livable. And it's a race right now, right? You see some really great stuff going on, more investment in renewables than in oil and gas last year. Mm-hmm. By the way, Texas installed 3 times more solar than California last year. I mean, there is fascinating stuff going on. So that's a race. And then meanwhile, plants getting hotter and storms are getting bigger. And
hottest days in history last week.
Oceans are going to get maxed out on how much carbon they can hold. And we got to get our CDR industry going. So if you're into climate and you've been opposing CDR, we got to get CDR working. Carbon dioxide removal. I know some people think, it gives the oil companies an excuse to keep burning. We just got to suck carbon out of the air any way we can, through oceans, through direct air capture, make that a huge industry. Otherwise, you're not going to get there.
Are you making any nuclear energy investments? Because many people think that's the only way to go.
We've backed some policy work on nuclear. By the way, we spent a lot of time on the left-right climate divide, and I think Republicans are getting they all know it. They just are kind of stuck, and they need a path, and nuclear is one of them. So if that's a successful path, great, let's do it. So there's a bunch of good groups working on getting
Most people think
Republicans.
renewables are not going to make it. Not enough. I know Bill Gates does. I've interviewed him many times about it.
I think you can get renewable fuels, though. That's an area we like. So think about pulling out carbon dioxide out of the air, splitting water with solar. You basically have like solar fuel. You're not drilling from the ground, you're drilling from the air. And you'll probably need that for planes and ships and all the other things you can't electrify. So I think that's a big area. So it kills two birds with one stone. Taking the carbon out and you're making fuels.
So how much money needs to be put to use here? And one of the things I did a couple of years ago was say, I just made this up. I said the world's first trillionaire is going to be a climate change person. I just completely made it up. I just wanted inspirational. Is that really where the money's going? Because it looks like it's rushing into AI right now. And you've said some very upsetting things about it, that you're worried. I'm worried about AI.
Yeah, we got to work on AI safety. We're not cult people who work on that, according to Mark Andreessen. But anyway, we won't go there. But climate, I think, is the biggest challenge we've ever faced. And I think it's going to be the greatest wealth generator of all time. And when we think about cost, it's not really cost, it's investment. There'll be trillions invested. But great, the world's got trillions to move around. We just got to get a little bit more motivated. I mean, a little bit of the weird good news, bad news. As things get worse, that tends to motivate people. But
interesting. I think we're like a frog in water myself.
Yeah. We're on it, though. I think everybody agrees. Again, even the Republicans agree. They just are stuck. We need to unstick them, which means working with them and not bashing them and not doom and glooming them. We got to put away. We got to get this humility going and start talking.
Be nice to them.
Tough love.
They're not very nice.
But they could really accelerate on the climate if you do the angles right. Moneymaker, beating China. It's just protecting hunting grounds, whatever it takes. Get them in the race.
Protecting hunting grass.
That hunting grounds is really a big thing.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm on it.
That's a big.
Anyway, my last question. One of the things you sound like a lot to me is like you might run for office.
Never in a million. I'd rather vomit blood from my eyeballs than do that.
So have you ever thought about it?
Never, ever, ever.
Why?
Because it sucks. Those jobs are awful.
But you're asking them to do better. And you're calling them power mongers like Gary Gensler. Don't you think you should be in the game?
He's a special case. He's a special case.
Yeah. Don't you think you should be in the game?
No. No, you can do better work on your own, quietly.
So never?
Ever, ever, never.
Would you serve in the Newsom administration?
Never, ever, ever.
So, no.
That's a hard no.
All right. Anyway, Chris, thank you. I really appreciate it. I do like having thoughtful discussions with, the idea that you have to hate tech or you don't. I love tech, which is why sometimes I get mad because I hate what they've done to the place, essentially. But I really appreciate thoughtful leaders like you and others. There's a lot of them. And so I'm glad we're here in dialogue. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.